Welcome, everybody. This is Kevin Larson, Vice President here at New Earth. I am excited about the conversation we get to have today. Today, we're talking about a really important holiday, and I get to talk about it with a really important person, a really incredible guest. He is not just an incredibly accomplished businessman, right? He is, if you can think of some, wouldn't that be a cool industry to be in? He's already in it, been in it for a while and been successful. I love talking with him. He's not only, a great businessman, but he's a great friend. And that is Earl Mann. Earl, how are you?
Hey, man, I am doing great. Happy Friday to you, by the way. Oh,
I know, right?
yeah.
I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you today because I think you'll have insights that maybe a lot of folks don't. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask you to do something you don't like doing. Why don't you brag about yourself for just a minute? Sort of your background, what you've been doing, and some of the things that you've accomplished.
All right, and I don't know if, I definitely can give you a little snapshot of kind of the highlights.
Sure.
Not so much in the spirit of bragging, and I know you meant that as a tongue in cheek, but more from I like people to know where my perspective originates.
Right.
Because we all have opinions and we all have ideas and perspectives. And sometimes just a little bit of understanding of, oh, that person comes from here, or oh, that person had this experience, that helps you appreciate or even just understand, oh, that's why they have that point of view. Okay. Right. So in the spirit of that disclosure, right? I'm from a small town in South Carolina, man. Beaufort, South Carolina, if you've ever been down in that country. Beautiful place.
One of the more beautiful states in this country.
Yeah, so it's a really good place. And from there I went into the military right after high school. In fact, 2 weeks after high school, I was gone. I was in the military. I was both enlisted in the Navy and an officer in the Marine Corps. Where I come from, that's really a military-centric town. In fact, Paris Island, the iconic Marine Corps boot camp, is based there. And my father retired there. My first job ever was bagging groceries on the Marine Corps base. So it's very much a part of where I come from and ultimately where I ended up going. Funny how that works. And, the short history of my professional life, because that's kind of what we're gonna leverage from today is, I learned, or I came to know, that there were a lot of people, although I'd gone to college, got a degree, was a Marine Corps officer, doing all this stuff and doing okay. I started to meet people in my adult life that just had more perspective and understanding on a lot more things than I thought. It is new things I didn't know. So back in 95, I think it was, I went on this massive re-education of myself commitment. And in really short, I said, look, I gave people benefit of the doubt when they said, if you take 4 years and get a college degree, your life would probably be better because of it. I said, okay, I'm going to take the same amount of effort and commitment, take the next 4 years, long-term commitment, and just learn about as much things as I possibly can on my own. And I went through this completely structured re-education process, read a ton of books and did a bunch of stuff in it. And of all the things I've done, that game, I now call it, completely changed the trajectory of my life. So I eventually left the Marine Corps as I got clearer on my life goals and what I really wanted to do out here in this world. And I eventually ended up in technical startups, my technology startups. And my first technical startup was back in 2000, and it was an AI company, believe it or not. So fortuitous, serendipity is a powerful thing, right? So I ended up in a place that was very much across the horizon, kind of very much foretold to things to come. And that was my start in corporate America. And since then, I've been, that company was acquired, and then I've been a part of others to startup acquisitions. And now I have a couple of tech companies on my own now in the areas of technology, and my hands in just a lot of interesting things. That's just become
and one more thing. I'm not going to let you get away without plugging your awesome podcast.
I have a podcast. It's actually just a passion project, and I did it as a personal growth challenge to myself. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I said, okay, I wanted to understand more about just the ecosystem of podcasts and how all that stuff works. And I said, well, no better way to learn than to just do it, right? So I created a podcast, and as it started to come together, it became very much something that I just like doing, right? So it's called Symbol Athletica. It's not a business, it's just a mindset podcast where I share things I've learned along the way that I thought were helpful in my path going forward. So it's fun. I just hit a milestone of I think I now have almost 3,000. Well, I passed the milestone. I'm approaching my next 3,000 listener mark, and it's fun. It's just something I do fun with no pressure to. I don't publish on a schedule. I don't do things every week. I don't do but I do it when I do it. But it's definitely got a life of its own. 20 different countries, a lot of things. But that's a fun, what I would call project. One of the projects I have in my hand and that feed me. So that gives me. That's one of the things I put energy in that gives me energy back. And that's just a part of my core philosophy of being as powerful of a presence in the moment that I can be. You got to do things that feed you energetically. So that's one of them. Yeah.
And if you're looking for good food, folks, you need to sign up for that podcast. It's really good. There you go. All right. So today we have an interesting topic, and that today, the celebration, we're coming up on Juneteenth.
Yes.
I'm really, really excited about this holiday becoming more mainstream. As we know, when it first really started being celebrated, it was a Texan holiday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of wrapped around that culture. And then it started to get more popular. And since that time, I think it's become nationally known. And personally, I think one day it should become its own holiday. I think it certainly merits that kind of attention. We should probably spend just a moment talking about the history for those that are not familiar with Juneteenth. Juneteenth, the Emancipation Proclamation was one thing, but in a time without Twitter, not everybody knew. And unfortunately, not a lot of people wanted that news to spread. So eventually, one of the last places in the country for it to be known was in Texas, originating down there in Galveston, Texas. Finally, the United States official recognition that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And after that, of course, led to the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And it's been a very, very poignant and important part of what we all claim to be true from the Constitution, right? That all men are free.
Right.
Well, it took a bit, but they figured it out. And, luckily, right won. And, these folks got the message and decided to make a holiday out of it, a celebration, as you can imagine. Anything else with the history of that, Earl, that kind of strikes you as important to make sure that people know?
No, I think you hit on the highest points, but I will add to that I think its adoption as a more mainstream fully American holiday will continue to evolve as people start to realize that it is not an event and or holiday and or discussion around a subset of people that make the aggregate of what the United States is. It is exactly what you said it is. It is one of the first. So, as with all great developments, either individually or collectively, sometimes you have to state the big goal, right? The big, heavy goal before it's actually real. And we are, people talk about the American exceptionalism and how we're this unique thing, and we truly are, because we're a country based on ideas, right? Among which being this whole all men are created equal. And we actually had the foresight to state that long before we were that, actually. And we had to grow, and it wasn't an easy thing. And growth is never easy, and it's never painless, and it's never without struggle. In fact, discomfort and struggle are fundamental requirements for growth to happen. in biology, in any other science. It's just a part of the process. You got to fight the gravity to remain who you are, to become who you can be, right? Or who you even should be. And, now people are starting to realize that among other things along our unique path as a country, that was one of the times where we got to, as a nation, say, see, we told you we are who we claim we are, right? And yes, it was a first step, amongst many, and still we're working at it. But you can't get to B until you do A, right? You can't get to 5 until you do 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the fact that we were able to say, as a country, we made this big claim, this great and powerful idea that all people are created equal, and then to rise to that, fight our way to that, struggle our way to that, to the point where we actually could take a pause and say, look, see, it is true. Yeah. We do endeavor to be who we have always stated that we are. And that's a forward-looking thing to me. And I'm a patriot, right? I consider myself I drink the American Kool-Aid. I wore a flag. I wore a uniform. I'm a Marine. We're, all of this good stuff. And part of the thing that makes us unique and special, Kevin, is that we can look at the world with open eyes. We can say, we have these great ideals, but here's where we are now. Here's where we come from. And it's not always a good picture, but most things aren't, right? But the fact that we stick to who we say we are, and we continue to become a more perfect union, and the fact that even the thing that defines who we are, the Constitution, has this built-in thing to adjust and grow with time, amendments, right? It just stands on this idea that is what I believe makes us the greatest country on earth, is that we are not a static thing. We are a continually growing, evolving, living example of the greatest example of human potential we can muster at this time. And I think all of those things, that's a long and kind of philosophical way of me explaining the power I see in the idea of Juneteenth, especially in the idea of Juneteenth being accepted by everybody, mainstream, all groups, all people from all walks of life and from all stages of the age category. It's a huge statement to who we are as a country.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of interesting because you're right when you say that the holiday reflects humanity, because there are a lot of people who probably would have chosen to take that history because it's negative and say, oh, no, right. Red, white, and blue, we got to hide that, right? Right. Sweep it under the rug, make sure people don't know. Let's not discuss it. In life, that's a terrible idea. And in this holiday, that's a terrible idea.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts about that?
I think you're hitting on some very, very resonant points. And I'll give you an analogy. So one of the most powerful things we have in the Uber conversation of health is before and after, right? You look at before, you look at after. And then it becomes undeniable that there was an effective process in the middle of that, right? Yeah. And I think that's because without that, without the before and after, people take for granted the after. They give the after in a myriad of other paths to how it came to be that could be largely false. If you didn't know you started at A and now you're at B, then you can't truly quantify the value of the journey, of the path, of the process of the journey. But, so we have to keep these, let's just call them, these struggling parts of our history as a country, these ugly things that we've come from and come beyond. And that gives us the greatest example of the process of our own self-directed evolution, is because we have looked before and after. And you know what, Kevin, the most inspiring thing for people that are really just paying attention is that today is tomorrow's after, bro. Today is tomorrow's after. If we can keep our stuff together and go 200 years from now, 300 years from now, we'll look back on today as a, ooh, look at how much we struggled back in 2021. Look at all the problems of 2021 compared to 2045. And, and in 2045, that becomes the new before for 2245. And that's the power of being sober and clear about the path where we come from, where we are. But the most important thing is to always have where are we going? Yeah. Because that justifies and frames everything, and it gives value to all those different, before shots along the way, because the more of that we do, the greater we can claim to be, because we are proving to be, captains of our own destiny, so to speak, as a nation, as a people, as citizens, as groups, as states, as all these different things. And that's one of the things that we claim to make us different than the rest of the world, is that we can be anything that we collectively or individually decide that we want to be and commit to becoming, and doing the hard work to get there.
What strikes me as also powerful about what you're saying is an acceptance, and maybe even more than an acceptance, of the past. Because yes, there's plenty of bad things in the past, plenty of awful things in the past, that without their acknowledgement, growth kind of seems impossible.
Right. And not only does it seem impossible, Kevin, it seems pointless. I mean, part of the point of aspiring to have a better vision of the future is this understanding that at no point in the present or the past were we captive to who we are, were we captive to who we were. We had all this, the whole country, in my 2 cents, the whole country was born out of people being discontent. People didn't leave Europe because they were unbelievably happy with who they are and their religious freedoms and their right to be and choose their own destinies. They weren't so enamored by the greatness of their current situation that they got on freaking wooden boats and crossed the treacherous ocean and went to this world of the unknown, featuring untold challenges. The reason they did all that is because they were not satisfied. They were not okay. They somehow knew that there was something much more and much greater than where they were, that gave them the fuel and the energy and the courage, or the desperation, or all these different things we call the energy, to take on that voyage. And that energy doesn't show up without that dichotomy, without you being able to show what we just defined as kind of before and after. You have to look at, you have to find this ability to look at where you are currently. And this is individual, collectively, citizens, states, individual, until you are able to look at your current circumstances and say, for whatever personal reason you say it, but, enough. Yeah. This is enough of this path. This is enough of not having the ability to pursue this. This is enough of whatever you come after that. But until you say enough, you are destined to remain who you are and what you have been. And you can't have that without being clear and sober and salient about some of the things, some of the places we've gone in our past, and then comparing that to some of the places we are now, because that will give you the best freestanding evidence that the future can be written to be anything that we are willing to commit to it to be. We are never captive to the moment, never.
And that, I love how throughout time that has been, especially on this topic, the evil that is slavery, right? This idea that people would say, well, it might cost me my life. Right. But it might not cost them theirs. So I'll rebel. You know? And eventually enough people caught on to that idea that we fight a civil war over it. And a president has, the political power and courage to say enough. You're right. This country is founded on not being complacent and comfortable.
That is who we are, man. That in our greatest time, if you look back even through any version of the greatest points in our history, would be points whatever came to your mind, I without even knowing the details of what came to your mind, it's probably a time where we got collectively completely unsatisfied with the state of things, and we were willing to go change it against all odds, too, against all odds, you know? Yeah. So it's just, this idea of self-creation, this idea of self-visualization and actualization, and I mean that collectively for this conversation, is a powerful one. And we claim as a nation to be built on that. We claim that to be not something ancillary to who we are, something fundamental to who we are. That is in our foundation, so we claim. So if those things are true, we will have these type of things like Juneteenth. We will have these type of things where we realize and we get to the point where enough of us say, enough, this is where we are, but it's not who we are. So we just need to do the hard work now to continue to evolve and to grow and to move forward to better display who we say we are.
I love that. I love it. Now, what a lot of people were fighting for, and what a lot of the freedom that they had hoped for, was an opportunity to create a life, right? Protection from of your family, life, liberty, and property, right? And it's interesting how a lot of those things were obviously denied, liberty in particular. But once liberty is, towards the direction of resolved and resolving, right? Life, hopefully we've got that one figured out, right? Then it became an issue of creating something and building businesses, creating a culture, creating a community. Freedom is one. What now will we do with it? Right.
Yeah.
And there's some beautiful stories. You got Black Wall Street in Oklahoma and a number of things like that. What are your thoughts on, okay, freedom, now what?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we all struggle with is just not taking the time to just get some personal answers just down and in front of us, like, what do I want this life to really be like? Well, I mean, what does that look like? What do I really want? We get so caught up in the day-to-day, and we live in a very fortunate situation in this country. If you've ever been out of this country and seen non-American poverty, you are immediately humbled. You are immediately humbled. And, the good, bad news about the American life, regardless of where you're coming from in it, because we all have struggles and we all different and interact with it in different ways. But for the most part, the necessities of life are covered. Most people aren't dealing with the literal struggle of living day to day, the next day. We like to internalize that we are a lot of times until you see people that actually are. And, I think we get caught up in just the noise and the blur of life and just the day to day. And we never really take time to just settle down and say, okay, if all things were true about this country, say, being what it is, and this is truly the land of opportunity, and me as a citizen or visitor of it even, I can do things here that I might not be able to do any place else on earth with a greater chance of whatever that being possibly being successful. What do I want enough to go forth and try to actually do that? We would be shocked at how many people don't have an answer to that, which is why they kind of stay in limbo for decades. They stay in limbo for not just moments and years, but for decades. And, some people are shaking up. Some people are inspired and inspiration wakes them up. Some people are waking up by tragic events in their life or things that they suddenly perceive they have to do. And then they start to ask these life-altering, potentially life-changing questions like, what do I really want to do? Like, what do I really know? Like, what really feeds me? I talked about that earlier. Like, what inspires me to get up every day and to go do whatever that is, and to face the uncertainty related to that, and the challenge related to that, and the pain related to that,
This was interesting.
and the losses related to that, right?
You ask that question every day. You ask that question all the time. A lot of people ask that question once.
Yeah. And it's just not enough, Kevin. I had this, one of this video podcast, something I did once that resonated with a lot of people is, we see this person at the stage, on the stage. And by stage, I don't mean physical stage. I mean, at a stage of the life that we want to emulate, that we admire, that we were like, wow, I would love to be that woman. I would love to be that guy, right? But we never asked ourselves, I call it the 30 minutes, right? We've never taken the hard soul searching 30 minutes to really explore what we think we want to be. And because of that, we never get beyond the 30 minutes to the 30 days of being in that, completely immersed in that, to seeing, hey, I thought I wanted to be a chef, but now that I'm really into it, that's not really my thing. What I really want to be is this. So we never get to the 30 days of uncovering that. Because we never get to the 30 days of uncovering that, we never get to the 3, the 4, the 5 months of starting to build instincts and reflexes and networks and people that will help us be successful in that. And because we never get to the 3, 4, 5 months of that, we never get to the 1 year of doing it, or 2 years of doing it, 3 years of doing it, where all these things get to gel and harden and fall into place. And then we get to step up on the stage of life, all because we went way back in the beginning of this, took that hard 30 minutes and said, what do I really want to be? What I really want to do? And what am I willing to commit to trying to discover? Can I really do this? But you can't get the after, right? You can't get this before and after thing is resonating with me right now, but you can't have the after without the stuff that has to come before it. Like, you just can't get there. You have to do the first things first, Kevin. And most people just never sit down and decide, well, what would they actually love to do here? Really quickly, a lot of people, I even talk a lot about pursuing your passion, pursuing your passion. And most people, when they hear the word passion, they equate that to something in the area of love, right? But when you look at the root word of passion, that word actually is morally akin to suffering. So the way I re-ask the question is, what in your life would you suffer or would it pain you to not be able to ever do or to do more? Because that's probably an indication more of what your passion probably is, and that's tremendous, untold human power for you to tap into if you can start to align your life to do more of those things that would pain you not to do. Because for one, it makes you feel better about who you are as a person. It feels better about your personal value and worthiness and the value that you're willing to put into a day. The energy you're willing to expend in your day goes exponentially up when you're doing that, but it's a powerful thing that most people they don't dare themselves to do. I know you like to dare metaphor, but they don't dare themselves to even discover that about themselves. So they don't even know here's a tough little, it's going to sound harsh, but it's probably very accurate. For people that are out there, and we've all been there at some points in our life, that have never really tried to find what their passion is and tried to find a way to get more of it in their life and allowing their life with it, those people, although they are alive, don't know what it is to be alive yet. They don't even know what it feels like to be alive yet. They're just a living, breathing organism. They don't know what it feels like to wake up with that mentality and that expectation and be fed and get the energy from doing that on a daily basis. They would truly be a completely different person. They would be transformed. They wouldn't just grow, Kevin. They would be literally transformed into another person when they get on that type of a mission.
So here's a question for you, because one of the things that has been the result of, the Juneteenth, right?
Right.
And then the 13th Amendment. But even then, it took until Brown versus Board of Education, 1956, right, for true integration to begin to really happen. And so it's actually, a little after, right? A little while, 20 years or so after, your and my generation was really more integrated than most had been ever before, right? but there are still some communities that struggle. And I don't just mean African-American communities, but
all of them.
All of the, so many.
Right.
I mean, if you've been through, West Virginia, you'll see it one way. If you've been through, East or West Texas, you'll see it another way. There's so many different communities that are struggling. How is this different for them? And maybe it's not, right? Maybe that's the hardest part, is that, yeah, you may have to lift a little bit more, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a lot of the challenge that we all deal with is we tend to think pretty small, and we tend to think in very near-term references, like right now. And
right.
Because we focus on the right now, we inadvertently and falsely believe that these things that are in our past are way in our past and have nothing to do with who we are. I'll give an example. Many people have probably heard of or know of Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a famous slave that freed over 200 slaves, a little tiny woman that just went back, kept going back, and freed like over 200 slaves. But here's something. This will be good perspective for people in our internalization of time. When Harriet Tubman was born, Thomas Jefferson was alive. Okay, that makes sense. Slavery, beginning of the country, all that stuff. When Harriet Tubman died, Ronald Reagan was alive.
Whoa.
So that's how short of a time we've been dealing with all of this stuff we're talking about. We're talking about Thomas Jefferson to Ronald Reagan in a single person's lifetime, in a single person's life experience. So, of course, we have problems and problem areas. And of course, we're still evolving. And of course, we can be better than who we are. But of course, it's been the blink of an eye, Yeah. And of course, the challenge we have, though, is we have to stay on it. We have to fight the good fight, because we will fall into this malaise or this slumber that thinks it's so far ago, we're now disconnected from it. But in that example I just gave you, you realize, oh, wait a minute, even in how I frame my own life, it's still right now. I mean, Ronald Reagan he overlapped my lifespan, your lifespan, right? And the person that did that, Harriet Tubman, overlapped the lifespan of a founding father as a country. So this whole country is relatively young, as good as things are and as great as we believe we can be as a country and are, and as well as we are doing in many, many, many areas. We're an infant. We're a baby.
Historically speaking, this just happened.
Yeah, this is still happening. It didn't happen. It's still happening, right? Yeah. Is that new? So yeah, it's going to be a struggle. And when you have bold vision, it's going to have bold requirements. It's going to take bold people with bold courage and a lot of bold hard work to make that vision come to pass. And what we did as a country was put one of the biggest, most boldest, visions out there that you can put as a country, which is, it is our intent to be the greatest nation on earth. And we want to be that based on these ideals that are rooted in humanity. We never, at the beginning in our Constitution, you don't see anything that says we will be the most prosperous, wealthy, money driven. We don't have that written in there. All the things that we say drive who we are and who we must strive to become are about these things that are more closely rooted in humanity. The rest of the stuff is byproducts of us just trying to be better people. The economy, the booming economy, the worldwide influence, all these things, even the military, which I still argue is one of the best, the strongest military on the planet. It didn't come from us. It came from us having a byproduct of needing to extend our ability to help other people around the world that see the world, the possibility of this world like we do, right? Yeah. And all these things that we now rate ourselves on, economy, GDP, unemployment, all these different growths. They're really byproducts of a much more worthy and powerful endeavor, which is how much better are we becoming as humans? How much better are we becoming as citizens, as people? Because every time we raise the bar in that, everything around us will boom, in my opinion. Everything around us will continue to boom. Yeah.
People that are struggling and listening, right? They're going to say, well, how do I tap into that? Earl, you maybe, and this is what's funny, because I already think I know where you're going to head with this, but they're going to say, well, you don't understand where I came from, right? I grew up in this difficult situation, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? How did they tap into this dream?
So that's a really big question, and it's a universal one that we all deal with at different times in our lives over and over again.
Yeah.
But the biggest, I can give you, hopefully I can give you some examples of things that you can find the answers in yourselves, right? And regardless of who's watching this, regardless of what you're going through at the moment, there is somebody else going through that right now and more. There's people going through right now what that has been and more that will do what you want to do and more. You know, they will take the reason that you cannot and make it their reason why they must. So the reason I get so excited about a country being built on philosophy and vision and character and all these things is because I have come to learn in the individual experience, those are the most powerful things. So if you are in a struggling situation, if you are in a tough situation, the first thing would be to decide, where would you rather be truly, right? And why? And then you have to use that tough situation as the reason to do the work. You just have to. You know, another thing that people say often that I believe to be profoundly truthful is it's a waste of time to spend all of your time looking for something that is fair. That's a worthy mission. Makes sense. And it sounds logical. But a much more meaningful mission would be to spend as much of your time as you can finding things that are worth it. Not fair, worth it. Because at the end of the day, you have to be willing to overcome the challenges. I call them the dragons, right? You have to be willing to fight the dragons. And everything good, Kevin, everything good for me still today in 2021 and for you right now, everything good that me and you believe we want sits behind on the other side of some challenge, some dragon. It's never on the front side of the dragon. It's always behind the dragon. And part of what makes us feel good when we get it, and it can be anything. It can be anything you set out to get. But the reason we feel good when we get it is because we have to go through the dragon to get it. We have to go through the fear, uncertainty, doubt, challenge. We have to go through that to get it. That's where the good feeling of getting it comes from. You know, that's why so many people that are given things aren't happy. They create chaos in their life, in my opinion, might be to create some dragons in their life that they now have to slay because they just want that feel-good feeling of having overcome some challenges. It's just innately who we are, especially as a country. It's definitely who we are. We pick the biggest, most complicated things that we can think of, and we claim, oh, that's not only what we're gonna do, that's actually who we are. That's our DNA. That's us. No. The odds being against us, yay! That must be something worth doing because that's what we do. We're Americans. We fight the odds all the time. The odds being against us are normal odds. You know, in fact, that's why we feel so good about who we are. Is because when we succeed, and we don't always succeed, or at least we don't always succeed fast, but when we do succeed, there's nothing more exciting, intoxicating than the euphoria of beating odds.
Yeah.
I'm in Las Vegas, man. And that's why people come here, right? They come here knowing that the minute they step off the airplane, every odd in this town is against them. Everyone. But still, when they win, in that moment, they beat the odds and it fills their body, man, with something that's magic. So we can do that. We can do that. We do that. We can do that as individuals. We can do that as a country. by continuing to raise the bar of who we are committing that we are. Because every time we raise the bar, the odds change more against us. This is a complicated thing we're trying to do with this American experiment. It is super complicated. People from all over, from all walks of life. We dare say, Kevin, that we don't care where you come from. We don't care how you're educated. We don't care how smart you are. But if you want it, you are free to go get it and to figure it out. That's so complicated. That is such a big, audacious goal to have as a people that most people look at us and marvel. Most people from around the world look at us and they're just like, wow, they can't even, wow. We claim to be that. That is, the odds will always, and thank God for this, the odds will always be against us.
I love it. I love it. All right. So as we wrap up, I wanted to make, we do have a promotion because people are getting the fire. They're being lit up by what you're talking about. And maybe they've chosen this industry. Maybe they've chosen New Earth, right? And they want to plant their flag here and build a business and do something unique for themselves, because products that work, right, that make a difference, and a business that can do the same. So they can generate an income, right? We've actually put together a promotion that for 2 hours, once this is over, everybody is going to get a free enrollment that comes on and decides to take the opportunity to make something of that freedom that you've been gifted by being here, right?
Yeah.
By showing up. So in your mind, right, you know us, you know our company, you know our products.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start.
You guys I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing over there. Bilal is an unbelievable human being, and that's the whole team over there. And you have one of my favorite products on the planet, which is that AFA algae. Took some today. So I think it's an exceptionally fertile ground for people to start the personal challenge of changing their own trajectory. And for some non-obvious reasons. You can talk to them about the business and the opportunity and all that stuff. But when you fully take on, like we just got finished going, I got on my soapbox about raising the bar. It comes down to that. And you got to start with you, Kevin. You got to start with raising the bar of what your body can do health-wise, energy-wise, resilient-wise, mental clarity-wise. I mean, if you can't commit to that, if you can't commit to something as personal as the betterment of you, then you're never going to do anything ancillary to that. It starts there. So one of the things I've always loved about what you guys have going over there is, I believe in wild and free and natural nutrition. And you guys are all about that. In fact, I will credit you guys a lot to the accelerated education, my own personal accelerated education in some areas, especially regarding algae, which I'm a huge fan of. But yeah, if you can't start with committing to yourself, to making you a better you in the next 30, 90 days, then you should feel a little bit less certain about anything else out there that you think you're going to commit you to doing, because you're going to be committed less to those things than you are to yourself. So the first commitment should be to yourself, to making you more capable, more resilient, more powerful, dare we say it. And then from that, the more in tune with that you get, Kevin, the more you know that's possible, the more you're willing to do the other stuff. And your goals, you will raise the bar automatically. You will raise your own bar. And that's when you become in this self-fulfilling, perpetual process of getting better and better and better and better. And oh, by the way, all the research shows that you will be getting happier and happier and happier and happier, right? So this is really a mission for happiness. Has nothing to do with money in the bank. Directly, indirectly, maybe, right? But it has everything to do with you adopting this self-determinism, this ability to look at your circumstances and to be here, but be not trapped here, right? To be in this world, but not of it, to be transformed. You have that ability to transform and become these things, what of your choosing. But you got to believe you can do that. And the way you get to believe you to do that is to do it. Take control, make something happen, like right now.
Make a choice and make it happen. There's the only ways around it. It's interesting because I say this a lot, but momentum, building yourself, building your business, it's not a phenomenon. Doesn't fall out of the sky and land on you. It's a choice. You make the decision to go do the things that create it. You have the ability to create your own win for your own sales. I absolutely love talking with you, Earl. You always make me feel better. You always point me in a good direction. That's why we're such good friends, is because I get so much from you.
I appreciate the invite, and I love talk. Whenever we talk, believe it or not, we always talk about these type of things.
We do.
Character.
Every time.
Yeah, just human things, man. You and I are both on this mission to be better humans individually, and you know, that's a worthy tribe, my friend. That's a worthy.
Amen. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. To all of those that are celebrating, have a wonderful Juneteenth. To those that are just becoming aware of it, make it a holiday. Choose to make it a holiday and do some observances. Do a little homework and open your mind up to what the struggle and the dragons that others have slain.
Yeah.
And maybe you could identify your own and start slaying them as well. Thank you so much, Earl. We'll talk to you all soon.